Welcome back to This is Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me, I still have Professor Bola Akintenuwa, Director General, Polytech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office of. Well, today we've been talking about two major icons. Pope Benedict XVI, who died at the age of 95, and the 265th Pope of the Catholic Church, who resigned within 8 years of his assumption of office due to old age, and now he has passed on. And we've been talking about his legacy with Most Reverend Ignatius Kaigama, the Archbishop, Catholic Archbishop of the Abuja Diocese. And then he also talked about the new year, expectations of Nigerians, hope, and all of that. We also talked about Pele, the divine genius who redefined football. There was football before him. But from 1957, when he brought his divine genius to bear on it, he changed the face of the game. Not just in Brazil, but also at the World Cup, but also at the United States, where in 1975, he played for the New York Cosmos before he eventually retired after an exhibition match and after scoring over 1,000 goals to be the greatest of all times, properly documented in the Guinness Book of World Records, properly recognized by FIFA and also by the International Olympic Committee. Let me start with you, Professor Akintenuwa.
Well, let me start by wishing you a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We need to wish ourselves at least better something.
Yes.
Good. Now, on expectation for the year 2023, I had the opportunity of listening to one sermon 2 days ago at the Omalade Alafia Parish of the Celestial Church of Christ. It was, I think, Venerable Superior Evangelist Adenyika, who told us that pity, mercy, must first of all exist before anybody can celebrate or expect anything. That you only celebrate on the basis of the fact that you have the mercy of God. Now, when I look at that particular submission in the context of expectations in the year 2023, is it possible to continue to wallow in sins and then expect blessings of God, goodness? Now, can it be easily assumed that you can expect good things without, first of all, ensuring that God will enable that? You see, my expectation, based on the submissions of the three speakers, our guests, I think that unless we first of all accept to imbibe, to evolve the culture of truth, without that, we can continue to dream, to expect. We wouldn't have any way forward, good way forward. And I will explain this at three complementary levels: the biblical, the spiritual angle, the political angle, and the conjectural angle. You see, biblically, we have been told that the smallest in sin cannot come and stand before God. Now, having God, any expectation you decide to pursue, to hope for, you need God as an enabler. But we consciously in Nigeria do the wrong thing. When Dr. Abati asked Michelle Obi What is wrong with Nigeria, for instance? Why is it that in Brazil they can do it, you can have a Pele bringing a good international image for the country? What is wrong with Nigeria? Then you discover he told us that we are not doing the right thing. Michel Obi told us, and that is a bitter truth. We consciously refuse to do what is right at the right time. So in this case, we know our problems. Now, if I look at the second point of analysis, politically, why is it that our own professional politicians, who have been described as a bunch of thugs, now, it's not that they are not competent. It is not that they are not even trying to seek godliness, but they seek godliness the wrong way. If you want God to be with you, if you want Nigeria, all right, you want to win elections, then you must learn how to do it truthfully. You must be fair, you must be just. But we set that one aside. We want what is good by killing people, thuggery, vote buying. That's one angle to that. When you look at it conjecturally, I think that our expectation is to seek a greater Nigeria that can provide constructive leadership for the black world, that can protect, promote, advance black dignity. Because Nigeria is the terra cognita, is the most populous, black population. And that in itself should be, a reason to provide leadership for the black world. And in this case, we can do this, we can survive if we can seek righteousness. Righteousness exalts a nation. So I think that our expectation should be to plead with God, to have mercy, to have pity on Nigerians. I borrowed this from Venerable Adenyinka. In this particular case, if we do not seek the mercy of God to forgive us, whatever you expect, we will just be moving around for nothing. When we now look at the case of Benedict XVI, the Pope who died, one quick point there. He has been described, identified as the first pope in more than 700 years.
600 years.
Now, to have voluntarily resigned. Now, in Nigeria, for instance, what's the lesson? Everybody wants to die while in power for obvious reasons. He recognizes that his mental, situation, his mental health, his capacity, strength, physical, is failing. And he said that the mandate he has, to promote the word of God, to evangelize, he could no longer do that. And he voluntarily recognized that and resigned. This is exemplary. Politicians do not seek to die. Even when you are a leader of a church, you don't have to stay there where you know you do not have that capacity. It's a very good lesson. And we must always ask this question. I ask this question that, look, why is Benedict XVI being celebrated today? In the same way, Pele in Brazil, why is he internationally, globally being celebrated? There's nothing to add to what had been said, that even Dr. Abati had told us here. There, he has won many laureates awards. He's a UNESCO ambassador. He had scored more than 1,000, goals. Just imagine, at the age of 16, 17, when the manager considered that he was too young, he didn't want to even field him. He took active part in the 1957 World Cup. He didn't score. He began scoring in 1958 at the tender age of 17. Imagine that. Now, if at that tender age he was considered fit and he was fielded to play, why is it that we are not addressing our own issues? To conclude, I asked this question and I want Dr. Abati to reflect on it. Segun Odegbami told us at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs that in 2006, he made efforts to ensure that Nigeria is allowed to play host to the World Cup. Ghana, many countries in West Africa, jubilated, they were very happy. But here in Nigeria, they were not happy. They didn't support Segun Odegbami. Now Odegbami again has come back to say 2034 should not miss Nigeria. The World Cup for 2034 should be one that everybody should be interested in. Michel Obi told us that we missed, the benefits, the gains of taking active part in World Cup. Meaning that, look, if you participate, you win, you are giving so amount of money. Now 2034 is another critical period to lay a new foundation to project Nigeria internationally, to present the black people of Nigeria in particular, the headquarters of World Cup, black people of the world. What are we doing in this particular case? So if we continue with this culture of not supporting good initiatives, it is most unfortunate.
Okay. Well, Happy New Year, Yemi. Three issues on the table. New Year expectations, Benedict XVI, and also Pele. Prof says Nigeria should host the World Cup. Well, South Africa did it in 2010. But if you say we host the World Cup in 2034 with our debt burden, how can that possibly be a priority? Although when countries host the World Cup or the Olympics, they use it to develop infrastructure and also, to bring glory to the country. Is Nigeria ready? I doubt. Benjamin, over to you.
Obvious. Well, I think let me start with the Benedict.
Benedict.
No, again, Benedict, but actually the Archbishop. And I'll start with his point about hope. I think you had challenged him that he was praying, in a sense, that Nigerians need hope, whereas clerics are supposed to give hope. Yeah. But I think he said it within the context of the fact of our presidential candidates, or our candidates generally. So we're electing a president, 28 governors, 109 senators, 360 House of Rep members, and a little over 100 or almost 1,000 State House of Assembly members. And the issue, I think, for me, ties with what has been said about Pele and his ability to have used a game that he excelled at, a game he loved, to also bring fame, in a sense, quote unquote, to his country, or bring prominence to not only the sport, but also to Brazil. And Brazil, not only Brazil that leveraged it, I think the football world leveraged it. I'm not a big football fan, but as a child, I knew who Pele was. Not because I followed football particularly, but just for what he represented, as you said.
It's never too late. You can still play football.
Not play. I said you won't follow. You say you're talking about play. I want to play tennis. Tennis was my sport of choice.
Okay,
playing soccer was a different game. But I think the core of what has been said really is that he used his love for football to preach love and to show love and to campaign on a variety of different issues. Unfortunately, that's not what we have seen with our current candidates. And I think for me, that was the heart of what the Archbishop was talking about. He said there's a queue at his door because he doesn't have police, he doesn't have dogs pushing people away. And where free access, exactly. And where people should be going to elect duty bearers, really, that they are coming to him because he has access. But I think this is where I now disagree a bit with what Prof has said, because Prof was saying that, tying that to expectations, that we should ask God for mercy. I guess God this is not to turn this into a Sunday, well, it's a Sunday anyway, so we can do a little segue. God has infinite mercy. But for those of us who and especially for the Archbishop and what he was saying, the Bible is also clear. When we reference it, it says that if my people who are called by my name would turn from their wicked ways. So it's not to say that God should give us mercy, but when do we as people of faith decide that we have done enough damage to ourselves and to our country, and then take a decision that, in a sense, enough is enough, that we want to do better, we want to do things differently. So, I believe that the faith-based institutions have a huge responsibility in not only trying to put a plaster on problems, but in encouraging people who follow them to think about how the quality of leadership affects their quality of life. So you cannot choose not to vote on election day, or vote for someone that gives you 500 or 1,000 naira, or vote for someone that has no plan or hasn't said anything, and then come to my doorstep and start weeping because the economy is hard, you can't pay school fees, and you expect me as a cleric to solve that problem, when clerics haven't done the job of educating. I mean, I say this all the time. Every Nigerian that either goes to a mosque or a church will hear their imam and their pastor speak in 1 year more than they will hear Buhari speak in 8. In 1 year, if not less. So if you have the platform to speak every Sunday, every Friday, every whatever special service you are doing, to let people connect leadership, political leadership, to their quality of life, so they don't spend their whole lives in church. We are fasting, praying, doing night vigil because life is hard. But it's hard because we keep electing people who are not poised to serve. So I tie all that back to Pele, his love for football and what he was able to do with football. Tie that a bit to what Michel Obi said about the fact that none of our presidential candidates is actually speaking to the future of Nigeria, speaking to what they can do with a lot of these assets that we have. I mean, you equipped that it was the entertainment sector that represented us at the World Cup. And I think that's very significant in where we have found ourselves. Because the entertainment sector is a sector that without any government intervention, Davido doesn't need government to sing. His own is even Babalo, so if he needs to fly to wherever, I mean, in a sense, even if our airports are not, our planes are not flying or Emirates cancels, Davido can get himself wherever he needs to be. And I say that tongue in cheek to say that it's a sector that despite the lack of government intervention, they've been able to do a lot with it. And then lastly, on, what else did I want to tie that to? And I also just wanted to draw attention to the pullout that we have in this day's editorial board that talks about the 3 presidential candidates that we had an opportunity to speak to. And it really just reemphasizes that about who is really speaking to a future that talks about Nigeria as a country, unity, and the challenges that we have. Oh, and lastly, Pope Benedict, the Archbishop talked about how, as a conservative, he was very clear about the values of the Catholic Church. So that a man and a woman get married, and there was something else. Oh yeah, abortion, right to life. And I thought that was a very interesting parallel to Qatar. Qatar used the World Cup to propagate or to showcase Qatar as a country, but they also used it as an opportunity to showcase their values. So we conservative, exactly. So even though there was a lot of uproar at the beginning, that how can you do this? How can you be this? How can you be that? People got into the country and had an excellent time. There was excellence, there was service, and by the time they were leaving, these issues that they had started shouting about at the beginning suddenly petered out. But Qataris were not fazed because they were very clear about their values. And I think for me, I mean, you can, as you said at the beginning, you can talk about Pope Benedict being controversial all you want, but he was very clear about the values that he believed his faith stood for. And I think there's a place for that in different contexts. If there's clarity around the values or shared values, then it makes it a lot easier for people to stand and fight for those values because it's a shared system.
Yeah, very good point made. Well, in our church yesterday, the pastor at the also Anglican Church Lekki talked about miracles. That the year 2023 will be a year
of miracles,
of magical miracles, and we hope that will come to pass collectively, and also in our individual lives.
If God accepts such prayers, you see, we must not be mistaken. The Bible is so clear. I'm not unaware of the fact that God says, if he be with you, who can be against you? He even said, I will bless who I choose to bless. So it's not even by your own making. But the problem we have in Nigeria, for instance, which the pastors are no longer underscoring, I am saying that you cannot be consciously engaging in what God does not want, and you now want to expect something good to come. That's the point I'm making.
Well, but the beauty of Nigerian life and society is that we're all people of faith, and we're probably once described as we were
the most
resilient people on the surface of the earth. So we go into this new year with a lot of resilience, with hope, with expectations that this will be a year of miracles for all of us. President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the Nigerian police to take the strongest possible action against the policeman who was responsible for the shooting to death of a lawyer, Mrs. Bolanle Rahim, right here in Lagos on Christmas Day. In a statement by his spokesperson, Garuba Shehu, Buhari assured the family of the deceased and members of the Nigerian Bar Association that justice will prevail. The president said the incident is a stark reminder of the recurring menace of the mishandling of weapons. He calls on law enforcement agencies to ensure the full implementation of reforms instituted by his administration on weapons handling, as well as the protection of the rights of citizens. Meanwhile, the Lagos State Police Command has identified an assistant superintendent of police, Drambi Vande, as the officer who shot Bolanle Rahim in the Ajah area of the state on Christmas Day. The command spokesperson, Benjamin Hundeyin, said Vande, who was attached to the Ajiwe Police Division in Ajah, has been transferred to the State Criminal Investigation Department. He promised that the investigation into the death of the lawyer will be swift. The police PRO also confirmed that 2 officers arrested over the killing of Bolanle Rahim had been released. The 2 officers were present when Vande shot the lady lawyer in front of her family. In a related development, a chief magistrate's court in Lagos has also remanded in prison the suspected killer cop, Assistant Superintendent of Police Drambi Vande, for the shooting to death of Lagos lawyer Bolanle Rahim on Christmas Day. Vande is expected to be held in prison till January 30, 2023, pending advice on the case from the Office of the Lagos State Directorate of Public Prosecutions. The command's public relations officer, Benjamin Hundeyin, made the disclosure in a tweet on his official Twitter handle. Arise News turned to the spokesperson for the Lagos State Police Command, Benjamin Hundeyin, for his comments on the killing of Mrs. Bolanle Rahim.
Yes, I would say we are closer to finding out what really happened because the investigation has commenced, and with each passing day, we're getting closer to having the reports of the investigation. So in a couple of days, I'm sure that the report will be out and everybody would know what's really transpired because we are going to make it public. Well, for now, I've not laid my hands on the investigation report, so I wouldn't be able to give specifics, but I can confirm that ASP Drambi Vande was the one who shot, and the other 2 people with him, the other 2 officers with him, were not part of that shooting because it caught them unawares too, and for that reason, they are going to be released. Only the person who committed the offense would face the music. Well, justice in this case is going to be immediate, so I can say very soon. You can tell because we met with the family the same day this incident happened. We also met with the NBA at the police headquarters. And today, the Commissioner of Police in Lagos State, CP Abiodun Alabi, was also at the family residence to assure them that justice will be served and swiftly too. So in this particular case, we have also promised the public that we are going to update them regularly on what we are doing. So people can rest assured that nothing will be swept under the rug. Well, we can't call it a failure of reforms because it all depends on what you want to focus on. If you want to focus on the impact of the reforms, you would see that these reforms are actually working in many areas of the force. But unfortunately, one errant officer has misbehaved, and we can't use that one incident to say that the entire reforms have failed. So what we're doing in this case is to do it on an individual basis, on a case-by-case basis. So this officer has misbehaved. Roughly 3 weeks ago, another officer from that division shot somebody dead He too is in detention. His case is being wrapped up now. So it's on individual basis. Each police officer who commits an offense would face the music. But that shouldn't be a yardstick to judge the entire reform. Well, for us in the police, we do not determine the fate of ASPs and above. The Police Service Commission does that, but it is in our place to go through the incident, investigate, and submit a report with our recommendation to the Police Service Commission. So we shall be recommending the strongest possible punishment, and that will be passed to the Police Service Commission. And we do hope that they would uphold that recommendation, which ultimately will be a dismissal. And that will pave way for his prosecution. Well, I can confirm that we have shooting ranges. We have the outdoor ranges and we have the indoor ranges. And they are functional. People go there year in, year out to practice shooting. I can confirm that. Well, that's why we have what we call training and retraining. So it's not just a one-off thing. For every now and then, you are selected and you are picked and you are directed to go for these trainings. So we shouldn't generalize that because one or two officers have misused their firearms. That means maybe.
Okay, there you have it. Yemi, you were part of the NSAS protest of the year 2020, 2 years ago. Looks like we have not learned anything. These policemen continue to engage in extrajudicial killing, police brutality. Ganiyu Braimo was killed by policemen from this same Ajiwe police station in Aja on December 7. On December 25, they assassinated, that's the appropriate word to use, Mrs. Bolanle Rahim, pregnant with twins. So they not only killed her, they killed 2 unborn children.
3 people.
And yet we're being told, oh, the case, justice will be served, justice will be done. The question is, who is the next victim? With this gun-touching policemen killing the same people that they're supposed to serve. Yemi, are you disappointed or not?
Not so, I'm not, absolutely not surprised. We can't expect a system that's broken to behave any differently. And I think it's actually quite disingenuous of the PRO to frame it as if it's a singular issue of police officers who are misusing the weapons that they were given. It's a structural problem. The police have a structural problem in not only the way it's structured, but also in their response to the abuse of power. And they've refused to do that. They talk about reforms. And so just 2 things in terms of context. They talk about reforms. NSAS was 2 years ago. A minister of, I think, police affairs, if I'm not mistaken, speaking on behalf of Mr. President, said that this administration what's the word I'm looking for, acceded to the 545 demands. That was a blatant lie. Because one of the 545 demands was the fact that police officers should be subject to psychological evaluation periodically. Because look, Nigeria is stressful enough. I'll give that all of us are in different ways dealing with one trauma or the other. Police officers are not exempt. But you can't then expect them to not only be traumatized by the state of the nation, but then you weaponize them and their living conditions are not great. So there's that. You now layer that with when people behave badly or kill people, murder people, assassinate people, then nothing happens. So you create a culture of impunity where they know that nothing will happen. And because police officers will tell you to your face, I will shoot you and nothing will happen. So when that level of boldness exists, a PRO for Lagos State cannot then come on air and make a flippant statement around the fact that it's misuse of weapons. It's not. It's an abuse of power that they refuse to do anything about. And it's further exacerbated by the fact that this young man was shot 2 weeks before Bolanle. Bolanle is not the first, and she will not be the last if we don't solve this problem. But Bolanle's issue has gotten a lot of emotional attention. 1, it was Christmas Day. 2, she was pregnant with twins. 3, she was shot in front of her family. 4, she's a lawyer, so the NBA spoke up. 5, she's a woman, so a lot of women associations spoke up. So you have a lot of that. The governor of Lagos State issued maybe 3 statements on social media, sent a delegation to go and see him. I said, I'm going to send a letter myself to Mr. Sanwo-Olu of a list of people that the police have killed and ask him how many of them did he send delegations to go and visit. Because we can't take this issue and treat it as a, what's the word I'm looking for? As an anomaly. Exactly, as an anomaly that, oh, this doesn't normally happen. So because this has happened, we're issuing statements. Mr. President is issuing statements. How many Nigerians have been slaughtered under his administration? Not just by police, by kidnappers, by Boko Haram, by army officers. And I'm not quite sure I've seen a statement from him. And he's saying statements like the strongest possible action. Mr. President, please, the strongest possible action to save people, like to save Nigerians and honor Bolanle's death is for you, as the commander-in-chief of Nigeria, to ensure that the police are actually doing what they are supposed to do per the Constitution. That's why young Nigerians took to the streets 2 years ago. You got afraid that we were trying to overthrow your government, but they were simply saying that they're tired of being killed. And 2 years later, that still hasn't changed. Young Nigerians are still being killed on a regular basis. But so the response from the governor of Lagos State, the response from Mr. President re-emphasizes the point that there's no actual work being done structurally. We're just interested in PR. Issue statements, justice will be done. How many times have Mr. President said, swift, it will be done swift? What are his standard statements? We shall not go unpunished, we shall do something, 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 and nothing happens. We're going into another election year. Again, please, Nigerians, Senator, House of Rep member, governor, presidential candidates, we need to ask difficult questions around what do we plan to do around our police architecture. Lots of emotions around state police, this, that, or the other, but we need to recognize that the system is broken and there must be clarity around how we plan to fix it.
How to fix it.
Bolanle is not an isolated incident. There will be a lot more Bolanles if we don't fix this problem.
Well, Professor Akinteruwa, the local government chairman, Etiosa local government, has named a street after Mrs. Bolanle Rahim. But the husband, Benga Rahim, made the point that all of these emotions, all of this photo ops will not bring his wife back. Okay? So you have made a man a widow. You have robbed a young girl of 5 years old of his mother. You have thrown an entire family into sorrow on Christmas Day, a day that is supposed to be a day of love, of joy, of sacrifice, of remembrance. Again, what is wrong with us?
Many things. Whenever I make some submissions here, at times we look at them as if one is just a critic of the government. Yes. Yemi made the good point that the problem is structural. He also hypothesized that Bolanle Rahim may not be the end. That hypothesis has also a good foundation. I want to look at the problem from the perspective of how to stop it. It could be stopped. If you look at the early 1970s, during the reign of the armed robbers, you see, the Lobos, the Oyenusis, etc. all along. When a thief, an armed robber, was caught in the villages, etc. all along, they were taken directly to their houses, in front of their houses, their family houses, and they are dealt with. They are shown to the family that, look, you are a disgrace to this family is a disgrace to the community. So it's not a question of just seeking to prosecute. You know the solution to this option, there are two options. Option one is to go and amend whatever law is applicable and ensure that anybody who engages in extrajudicial killing should be given, the same treatment. He should be killed. I wouldn't go to the extent to say that, look, because Nigerian families, they don't care about their children. When somebody steals money and he brings the money back and they are benefiting, they protect him. They go along with him. In Nigeria, you steal money, you take it to the church, you take it to the community, they give you traditional trusts. Now, if for instance you now decide to kill, all right, anybody who has killed, then the family will begin to learn lessons. I can tell you that, look, this option one of providing for a law that will not just say, well, you give a suspect 10 years imprisonment, 20 years imprisonment. Is that commensurate with the killing? The husband said, well, all these sentiments will not bring the wife back. A good treatment, reciprocal treatment, is to ensure that whoever kills extrajudicially is also killed. We don't need, look, all these societal CG.
Thou shalt not kill.
Thou shalt not kill, yes, but the law allows the government
To kill.
to kill. Yes, military, you are trained to kill your enemy first before you are
No,
killed.
Section 315 of the Criminal Code of Nigeria says that if you take another man's life by unlawful means, you are guilty of murder or manslaughter, and the appropriate punishment is prescribed there. Because under the Constitution, every human being has right to life and right to the dignity of the human person.
That is the beauty
and
of
the fact that you are wearing a
point.
uniform does not give you the power to take another man's life
That is the
unlawfully.
beauty of the point I'm making. That look here, if you refuse to recognize that particular provision of the law, then that thing you did, whether you call it abuse of power, misuse of weapon, then let it be given to you. Then the family will know. Some people are not, they don't have children, they don't have good families, they don't have settled home. So life doesn't mean anything to them, they can easily kill. Then you take their own life as well and let God judge. Leave the judgment to God. Why should you kill somebody? It's not fair. It's not. If you have committed an offense, please, why wouldn't the Nigerian police learn from the experiences of other policemen? When I was a student secretary of the National Union of Nigerian Students in France, for instance, and some Nigerians were sort of, either they said they engaged in cannabis or they were carrying drugs, etc. Then if the policemen come, they will meet many people together, they will only take away the person they are looking for. All right? But if you are in the course of investigation found to have been engaged, they now come back for you. They don't kill. The French police will even prefer, if you are killed, if you kill the French policemen in the course of their something, no problem. They are not eager, they don't kill people just like that. But 2020, NSAS something. Please, Yemi rightly pointed out, the language our president understands is condemnation. Everybody condemns. Whatever happens, they condemn. But post-condemnation era, what happens? Absolutely nothing. We will not be told what will happen in this particular case beyond all these gymnastics.
Okay, let's take our next topic of the day. Following China's decision to ease COVID restrictions, some countries are implementing their own restrictions on passengers arriving from China amid a sharp rise in COVID cases. While news of China relaxing its quarantine rules for international arrivals was received positively by airlines and passengers alike, a concerning rise in COVID cases across the country has led several countries to impose restrictions on passengers coming from China. So far, these countries are the United States, India, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Italy, and Malaysia. The United States will require testing for passengers flying from China with effect from January the 5th, while India has made COVID testing mandatory for travelers coming from China. Japan has also announced that it will require passengers from China to present a negative PCR test result, with those testing positive having to undergo a one-week isolation. South Korea will require all China-based travelers to take a PCR test up to 48 hours before arrival, in addition to a rapid antigen test upon arrival. Japan and South Korea are also considering a flight cap to limit the daily number of arrivals from China. And of course, there are Nigerians who have been saying the Nigerian government has been too silent, considering the fact that there is a lot of traffic from China to Nigeria. We have a big Chinese community in Nigeria. So the question is, shouldn't Nigeria join those other countries that I have mentioned in imposing new rules for travelers from China? Yemi Adamoleku.
I think we should. I mean, on average, we think we've sort of passed COVID. So it's not a major thing on the radar of anyone. And the way Nigeria coped with COVID probably also has people feeling quite relaxed compared to other countries. But I think it doesn't hurt. I mean, we still have that portal. And all the portal, well, we've stopped it. So maybe the portal should just be reactivated for people coming in from China, and asking them to take a test would not be too, I mean, we were doing it for a while, so it won't be anything new it's not a completely new measure, but I think it should be implemented given, and I mean, China is simply reacting to the fact that they stayed locked down for quite a long time. And so the natural immunity that people would have gotten by getting the disease and getting over it or being exposed, they don't have. So I don't think it really should be. It's an easy measure to implement, and we should do it. Will be my summary.
Well, Professor Akintero, what do you think?
There are 3 levels of analysis here. Everyone has been given a COVID-19 injection vaccine.
Everyone, you are very sure?
Well, at least.
Not everyone has taken it. Some people have chosen not to take it.
Okay.
So.
I succumb to powerful arguments. By talking about everyone, is that okay? In Nigeria, it is believed that no one is COVID-19 positive. We are given the impression that everything now has been thrown into the dustbin of history. So there's no need for anybody to worry. Now, the first level of analysis is, why did China relax its quarantine rules? Is it not because China believes that probably COVID-19 is no longer an issue? No. I'm coming. It's no longer an issue. And since there is evidence that in China you are still having cases of COVID-19, we have the carriers, why should you relax the regulation? So this is a question to answer. The second level of analysis is that of the many countries that have decided to engage in precautionary measures, self-preservation. This is perfectly in order. Rather than allow carriers, potential carriers of COVID-19 to come to their countries, they have done this. I agree with them. Finally, at the level of Nigeria, in this particular case, should we or not? We should. We should take this precautionary measure so that we do not allow ourselves to be faced with a greater problem.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Akintenwa. But before we go, I have on my phone a statement that has been issued today by President Olusegun Obasanjo. It's titled, "Dear compatriots and friends, my appeal to all Nigerians, particularly young Nigerians," and it's signed by former President Olusegun Obasanjo. It's quite a lengthy piece. It's dated January 1, 2023. I just want to take some snippets
summary of it
from it so that, you can, as we begin to round up, you can comment on it.
Reflect on that.
Now, it says, Happy New Year. May all our national calamities disappear this year. I'm constrained to write this letter to all Nigerians, especially young Nigerians, friends of Nigeria globally, as well as our development partners, because of the gravity, responsibility, and implications of the collective decision Nigerians, both young and old, will be making within the next 2 months. The last 7.5 years have no doubt been eventful and stressful years for many Nigerians. We have moved from frying pan to fire, and from mountain top to the valley. Our leaders have done their best, but their best has turned out to be not the best for Nigeria. And Nigerians at home and abroad, for most Nigerians, it was hell on earth. Those of us who are alive should thank God for his mercies, brace ourselves for the remaining few months of this administration, and pray and work very hard for an immediate better future. Future of liberation, restoration, and great hope and expectation. We have had campaigns going up and down the country, feeding us with what they mean and what they do not mean, what they understand and what they do not fully understand, what is possible and what is not possible, what is realistic and what is unrealistic, what is true and what is untrue. I believe that we need not be confused, nor be gullible. Let us be cautious, not to be fooled again. I've interacted with the major contestants, and I find it interesting that in one form or the other, each of them claims to want to do what I did during my presidency and to take Nigeria back to where it was at the height of my presidency and immediately after. I was pained that most of them do not realize that the Nigeria of today has been dragged down well below Nigeria of the beginning of my presidency in June 1999. Although at that time, Nigeria was in very bad shape and was tottering on the verge of collapse and breakup. Even then, Nigeria was not faced with a level of pervasive and mind-numbing insecurity, rudderless leadership, buoyed by mismanagement of diversity and pervasive corruption, bad economic policies resulting in extremes of poverty and massive unemployment and galloping inflation. For these reasons, I kept pointing out to them that the instruments used in 1999 to 2007 and methodology used will grossly be inadequate for the perilous situation we now find ourselves. Let me say straight away, I'm jumping now, that Emilokon, my turn, and I have paid my dues are one and the same thing, and a wrong attitude and mentality for the leadership of Nigeria now. They cannot form the pedestal to reinvent and to invest in a new Nigeria based on an all-Nigeria government for the liberation and restoration of Nigeria. Such a government must have representation from all sectors of our national life, public, private, civil society, professional, labor, employers, and the diaspora. The solution should be in we and us, and not in me and I. Olusegun Obasanjo, January 1, 2023. I mean, this is just excerpts from what he has said. I'm sure the full text will be available to Nigerians. But what do you think, Yemi Adamalekun, from the little you have heard from the Ebola Owu?
I mean, I skimmed through the document as well. I think for me, in all of that, he landed more or less on endorsing Peter Obi. And I think the interesting thing for me is that in 2015, he endorsed President Buhari. In 2019, he endorsed Atiku Abubakar. In 2023, he has changed his candidate. So while General Obasanjo, two-term...
President Obasanjo.
Retired General Obasanjo, two-term president of Nigeria, has his prerogative and his opinion. For me, his criteria of who he has chosen to endorse over the last 3 election cycle is quite debatable, I think. And I will use 2019 as an example, because he had summarily said Atiku Abubakar was bad market, if I summarize it that way, then turned around and endorsed him. And now it's Peter Obi appealing to younger audience. So it'll be interesting. He's a letter writer, so not surprising in that regard as well.
Well, Professor Akintewa, very briefly, your reaction to President Obasanjo's...
Let us simply differentiate his support for Obi from his person as a man of integrity. Integrity in the context that he has always been telling all Nigerians what he considers to be the truth. And
his truth?
Yes, his truth, yes. His version of the truth.
His version of the truth, very important, because that's not always the truth.
Yes, because you see, he's a forthright person, strong enough to have come out to say, look, Buhari wants to Fulanize, they want to Islamize. He came into the open and he's not telling us, be careful again. So we need to be more cautious so that the future can be bright.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Bola Akinterewa, and thank you very much, Yemi Adamalekun. You've been watching This is Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.